Right now, there's a bridge sitting between Detroit and Windsor that was supposed to save the North American economy. Instead, it might break it. Because 48 hours ago, Donald Trump didn't just threaten tariffs. He didn't just fire off another angry post. He did something far more dangerous. At 3 a.m., he quietly decided that the United States would not staff the customs booths on the American side of the brand new Gordie Howe International Bridge. No agents, no processing, no opening. Bridge that took years to build, blocked by paperwork. Trump thought this move would force Canada to fold. He thought the Prime Minister would panic, fly to Florida, beg for a deal. That didn't happen. Instead, Mark Carney walked into a press room in Ottawa, looked straight into the camera, and pulled a lever Washington didn't even know existed. If you think the trade war was scary before, stay with me, because what just happened next puts your gas prices, your groceries, and entire factory towns at risk. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the President of the United States suddenly went very, very quiet. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because depending on your state or province, this hits you very differently. Let's get everyone on the same page. This moved fast. If you pull up a satellite view of Detroit and Windsor right now, you'll see two bridges. One is old, crowded, privately owned, choked with 18-wheelers. That's the Ambassador Bridge. And then just down the river, you'll see the future. 6 massive lanes of steel and concrete, brand new customs plazas, built to move freight at a scale North America has never seen. The Gordie Howe International Bridge. This wasn't just another infrastructure project. It was supposed to be the fix. 25% of all trade between the US and Canada passes through this corridor. That's hundreds of millions of dollars every single day. Not just finished products either. Car parts, fuel systems, seat frames, transmission components. Some of those parts cross the border 6 or 7 times before a car is finished. That's how modern manufacturing works. Smooth, fast, just in time.
And this bridge was designed to remove the biggest choke point in that entire system. For years, Canada poured billions into it. They paid up front because they understood one thing. If this bridge flows, the entire continent flows. By last week, the concrete was dry, the lanes were painted, the opening was practically scheduled. And then, nothing. No ribbon cutting, no trucks. Because the bridge didn't fail. Politics did. And what happened next wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, calculated, and intentional. And that's what made it dangerous. Because Trump didn't block the bridge with soldiers, he blocked it with empty booths. And that brings us to the move nobody saw coming.
Here's what most headlines missed. Trump didn't issue a press conference. He didn't announce sanctions. He didn't even tweet it at first. Instead, the White House sent a memo to the Department of Homeland Security. Short, dry, bureaucratic. It ordered a halt on all personnel transfers to the new Gordie Howe Port of Entry. In simple English, no border agents were allowed to report for duty, and if there are no agents in the booths, the bridge cannot legally open. That's the loophole. Trump didn't shut the bridge down, he just refused to turn it on. And the reason matters, because this wasn't about safety or staffing shortages or logistics. This was leverage. Behind the scenes, the message to Canada was clear. If you want the bridge opened, dismantle your dairy supply management system, ban Chinese EVs completely, and pay a so-called security fee of $500 per truck. That's not negotiation. That's create the problem, sell the solution. A classic Trump move. The American media jumped immediately. Trump blocks bridge. Canada faces trade crisis. Economic shock looming. And honestly, under a different prime minister, this probably would have worked. Trudeau would have flown. He would have smiled. He would have tried to smooth things over. But Mark Carney isn't Justin Trudeau. And within 3 hours, Trump realized he had a problem. Because Canada didn't respond to the threat. They responded to something else entirely. And what they said sounded boring, until Wall Street heard it. 3 hours after the memo leaked, Carney's office released a statement. It didn't mention Trump. It didn't mention the bridge. It didn't mention tariffs. It said, "The Government of Canada is reviewing the operational status of energy infrastructure corridors in the Great Lakes region." That's it. No drama, no insults, no demands. If you're a normal person, that sounds like meaningless government noise, but if you work in energy or finance or logistics, your stomach just dropped. Because that sentence wasn't about bridges, it was about power. And within minutes, the smart money understood exactly what Carney was doing. Before I explain it, pause for 1 second and think about this. Why would Canada respond to a bridge dispute by talking about energy corridors? That's not random, that's a warning. And if this is starting to click for you, type "I see it" in the comments, because the next part is where Trump's leverage completely collapses. Because hidden behind that boring sentence is a pipeline that keeps the Midwest alive, and Trump forgot it existed.
Here's the receipt Trump didn't read. Line 5. If you've never heard of it, you're not alone. Most Americans haven't, and that's exactly why it's powerful. Line 5 is a massive pipeline that carries crude oil and natural gas liquids from Western Canada down through Wisconsin and Michigan into Ontario and then back into the United States. This isn't foreign oil for foreign use. This pipeline supplies over half of Michigan's propane, feeds jet fuel directly into Detroit Metro Airport, powers refineries in Toledo that make gasoline for Ohio in the Midwest, keeps heating systems running when winter hits. No Line 5 doesn't mean inconvenience. It means cold homes, grounded flights, empty gas stations. For years, Michigan politicians tried to shut it down for environmental reasons. Canada fought back, not with threats, but with law. A 1977 treaty guarantees uninterrupted energy flow between the two countries. Until now. Because Carney's statement didn't say he was shutting Line 5 down. He said he was reviewing operational status. That's banker language for, "We might stop defending this for you." If Canada stops fighting to keep Line 5 open, or worse, restricts flow on their side citing market or safety reviews, Michigan doesn't have months, it has weeks. And the timing couldn't be worse, because winter inventories are already tight, and Midwest voters are already angry about prices. That's when Wall Street stopped listening to Trump and started watching Carney. And the market reaction tells you everything.
Here's how you know who's bluffing. You don't watch press conferences, you watch markets. The moment Carney's statement hit the wires, something strange happened. The Canadian dollar didn't crash, it ticked up. That's not supposed to happen in a trade crisis. Why? Because traders understood something the headlines didn't. Canada wasn't panicking, Canada was holding cards. At the same time, Midwest energy futures spiked, heating oil jumped, propane contracts surged. Not days later, minutes. That's the market saying, the risk isn't Canada folding, the risk is America losing supply. And once markets price that in, politicians lose control. Because now the pressure isn't coming from across the border anymore, it's coming from inside his own house. And that's when you start seeing the psychology crack.
Trump runs on a simple algorithm. Max pressure, public spectacle, wait for the other side to break, declare victory. He did it with Mexico, he did it with NATO, he tried it with Canada before. But this time, the environment is different. Because borders aren't gates anymore. They're systems, algorithms, pipelines, just-in-time delivery networks. Trump thinks blocking the bridge hurts Canada, but because of 30 years of integration, it hurts his voters first. The factory in Grand Rapids shuts down. The truck route in Toledo disappears. The construction site in Pennsylvania runs out of materials. He's punching himself and waiting for Canada to flinch. And you can see the realization setting in. The frantic posts, the all-caps rants about ungrateful neighbors, the sudden silence afterward. Because Trump is used to dealing with countries that need his consumer market. Canada isn't one of them. Canada sells energy, food, critical minerals, uranium, aluminum, not cheap plastic junk, the stuff civilization runs on. And Trump is learning, in real time, that leverage cuts both ways. Which brings us to the man who understood this before the first tweet was even written, Mark Carney. To understand why this is going so badly for Trump, you need to understand one thing. Carney is not a politician in the normal sense. He's a central banker, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, the man who helped stabilize markets during the global financial crisis. This is someone who doesn't think in headlines.
He thinks in risk exposure, leverage ratios, systemic shocks. When Trudeau dealt with Trump, he tried charm, shared history, nice words, photo ops. Carney doesn't do any of that. He treats Trump the way you treat a distressed asset. You don't argue with it, you don't insult it, you contain it. Notice what Carney didn't do. He didn't call Trump reckless. He didn't rally public outrage. He didn't appeal to international norms, because he knows Trump doesn't care about norms. Instead, Carney went straight to the balance sheet. Trump attacked a symbol, the bridge. Carney targeted a system, the energy grid. That's not emotional escalation, that's asymmetric escalation. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because Trump needs wins now. Carney is playing for quarters, fiscal years, structural advantage. And here's the part that really matters. Carney isn't trying to pressure Trump directly. He's pressuring Trump's donors.
This is where Carney's strategy gets ruthless. By hinting at energy corridor reviews, he isn't threatening voters, he's threatening refiners, logistics giants, energy traders, defense contractors, the people who fund campaigns. Those companies don't tweet, they don't posture, they pick up phones. And when gas futures spike, when heating costs jump, when supply contracts wobble, they don't blame Canada, they blame uncertainty. And uncertainty comes from the White House. Carney is making Trump's own allies do the work for him. He's outsourcing the pressure. That's why Trump's silence matters, because when a man who lives on attention suddenly goes quiet, it means the calls are coming from inside the building. And there's something else Carney is signaling here, something much bigger than this bridge: sovereignty. For decades, Canadian leaders walked on eggshells, never appear anti-American, never escalate, never leverage. Carney seems done with that. What some insiders are calling the Donroe Doctrine, a quiet reversal of the old dynamic. We'll trade with you, we'll sell to you, but we won't be hostages to your election cycles anymore. If you block the bridge, we open another corridor. If you threaten tariffs, we diversify supply. If you destabilize, we insulate. This isn't emotional, it's cold, calculated. And for the first time, a Canadian Prime Minister is signaling something Washington isn't used to hearing. We don't need you the way we used to. That message scares people more than any tariff, because it means the relationship isn't guaranteed anymore. And once that assumption breaks, everything changes. So where does this go from here? There are only 3 paths, and one of them is dangerous enough to shake the entire continent.
Right now, there are only 3 ways this ends. No fourth option, no soft landing, and which one happens depends entirely on Trump's ego. Scenario A, the quiet fold. This is what Wall Street expects. The auto lobby calls the White House. Energy companies call the White House. Donors start asking uncomfortable questions. Trump declares victory. Maybe Canada agreed to buy more American products. Maybe there's a vague statement about cooperation, something symbolic, something meaningless. Border agents quietly show up. The booths open. The bridge goes live. Trump tweets, "Great deal." Carney says nothing. That silence is the win. And if you think that's likely, comment "quiet fold" below, because this is how power actually moves. But there's a darker path. Scenario B, escalation. This is where things get dangerous. Trump feels humiliated. He doubles down. He declares the bridge a national security issue, orders federal action, maybe even deploys personnel to physically block U.S. exits. If this happens, Carney executes option C. Energy flow restrictions, treaty protections quietly withdrawn, Canadian ambassador recalled for consultations. Michigan feels it first, then Ohio, then the Midwest. Gas prices don't creep up, they jump. Propane shortages hit, factories stall. This isn't a trade spat anymore, it's economic cardiac arrest. And if you think Trump would still push it this far, drop a "he would" in the comments, because history suggests he just might. But there's one more scenario, and this one changes everything.
This is the wild card. Carney uses the crisis as cover to announce a major diversification push. New trade corridors, deeper EU alignment, long-term supply commitments outside the US. No dramatic speech, No breakup announcement, just less dependence. That's not a punishment, that's a divorce. And once supply chains move, they don't come back easily. If this happens, historians will look back at this bridge and say, that's where it started. There was a moment yesterday that captured all of this perfectly. Carney was leaving Parliament Hill. A Fox News reporter shouted a question. "Mr. Prime Minister, are you worried President Trump will slap a 25% tariff on the bridge tolls?" Carney stopped, didn't smile, didn't frown. He adjusted his cufflink, looked at the reporter, and said, "The bridge is built. The concrete is dry. We're opening it. Whether the Americans decide to show up for work is entirely up to them." Then he got in his car. That wasn't defiance, that was dismissal. That's the energy of someone who knows where the leverage sits.
Let's bring this home, because this isn't about Trump or Carney or a bridge. It's about your wallet. If this dispute drags on, car prices rise and stay high, Midwest gas prices become volatile, food costs spike in winter, jobs tied to manufacturing feel pressure first. But the bigger shift is psychological. For 100 years, we believed a myth that the US and Canada were basically the same country with different flags, that the border didn't really matter. That myth died this week. If the United States can't even staff a customs booth with its closest ally, how does it lead the world? How does it reassure Europe or Taiwan or anyone? This is what retreat looks like. Not dramatic collapse, quiet unreliability. And the tragedy, the bully is losing. The bridge is just steel and concrete, but what's happening around it is the story of a new world order. Donald Trump proved the Canada-US relationship can be broken. Mark Carney proved it can be leveraged. And the rest of the world is watching closely, because this is the blueprint for dealing with a post-American America. You don't argue, you don't negotiate, you insulate, you build leverage, and you wait. So here's my question to you. If you were in Carney's position, would you pull the lever? Or is that playing a game too dangerous to risk? Tell me what you do in the comments. I'm reading them. And if you've watched this far, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because if that bridge opens or if it stays closed, you're going to feel it the very next morning. I'm watching the wires.